Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today I am really pleased to have with me on the line Michael Delon. Michael is a successful author and podcast host. When Michael found himself unhappy in his career, he decided it was time to switch gears and go back to his marketing roots. Before he opened his marketing firm, Michael authored On Marketing, a book that compiled all the knowledge he had on marketing and how it can help grow your business. Being an author of a marketing book created an air of expertise around him and his firm. Knowing that all marketing for people is, yeah, it's all about perception, he founded paperbackexpert.com, where he writes books for people so they can establish themselves as an authority in their field. So join me today, and as we learn how becoming the expert in your field helps others perceive you and watch your sales increase. So real excited to have this discussion today. Michael, thank you very much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Jeff, thank you. I appreciate it. It's going to be great to be here. I appreciate the invitation. It's going to be a fun conversation.
I love it. I love it. So I'm dying to hear about this backstory. You hinted at it a little bit on the, on the pre-call, and now it's like, oh my God, everyone's got to listen to this.
That's right.
Who is Michael Delon, and what makes you so awesome?
Well, thank you, sir. Well, everything for me started business-wise on the day that I escaped from prison. Okay, now, all right, that was not a literal prison. Okay, it was an emotional prison, Jeff, because I was in a job that I hated. My wife and I are followers of Christ. We'd been in a ministry to families in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where I live. We'd been there for about 8 years. I'd climbed the corporate ladder. I was on the leadership team, and they started going through corporate reorganizations. And I got kicked off the leadership team and shuffled around the ministry for 2 years. So that's my prison term. I was in a job I hated at a ministry I loved, and I knew I had to get out. So I talked to my wife. I prayed. I said, God, what am I going to do? He said, what do you want to do? I said, man, I want to go help small business owners with marketing because they struggle with and hate it. I love it. He said, go. So I stepped out of ministry and into marketing. And this was January 1st of 2013. I would come and meet with you, Jeff. I'd say, I can help you grow your business. We'd have a meeting, and somewhere in that meeting, you'd say, now, Michael, what have you done for the last few years? And I'd say, well, I've helped build marriages and families. And you'd say, Michael, that's super honorable. Way to go. Oh, look at the time. I've got another meeting. Let's keep this conversation going. And you'd usher me out the door. So I wasn't getting clients, and my income was going down. I was living on savings. I had to fix that. So I was at my church one day, pacing the hallways, praying, saying, God, how do I help Jeff? And God gave me that idea to put all of my ideas into a book. And so I did. I wrote my first book on marketing back in 2013. Then, Jeff, I'd call you, set an appointment. I'd mail a copy of my book to you before our meeting, and I'd walk into your office about a week later, and there it was. My book was on your desk, dog-eared, highlighted, and underlined. You'd read my book. And in that meeting, you'd say, now, Michael, in your book, you said, how do you help me do that? And you'd hire me. And I started gaining clients. Now, let me ask you a question, Jeff. What changed between those two meetings?
Well, first of all,
go ahead.
All right. So first of all, you have this tangible item that you sent somebody, right? Yep. Something that they can hold, that they can see, and that they can learn from, yep. Right? So you have so you have this on the desk. You also gave them the chance to read a little bit more about your background, read a little bit more about who you are, what makes you great, and how can you actually help them.
That's right. Yeah. And that's so missing in today's marketing, right? I tell people, I have lots of one big ideas, but one of them is be yourself and tell your story. Okay. I've got a great story I haven't even told you about how I got here, but people want to buy people. They want to buy, we've heard we got to know, like, and trust people. We beat that horse to death, but so many people don't even do that. And I want you to know my background in ministry, in marriage, that I'm an adoptive dad. I've got 2 foster girls and 2 biological sons. I want you to know that about me because that's going to resonate with you or it's going to repel you. I'm good either way. Because if you don't like who I am, Jeff, we shouldn't be doing business together. It's going to be a pain for both of us, right?
You know what's really cool about that is that I tell people all the time, like, I'm toxic to 2 out of 10 people I talk to, right? I know it. I accept it. I'm like, hey, you know something? I'm not everyone's cup of tea. good luck to you. Like, it's all good, right? And also, like part of this podcast, right, is that it's almost like a fail safe, right? So it's like, really, you want to get to know Jeff? Here, please listen to a few of my episodes. And some people are going to listen to it and be like, I'm never going to do business with that guy. But 8 out of 10 are going to be like, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I
Dude,
really want to talk to him, right?
yeah, take a step in my direction. And that's the beauty of podcasting, is allowing people to sample you, right? It's like going to a good
Mhm.
restaurant. Give me a sample, give me a taste. Yeah, that's what I want. And so that's how I use my podcast, right? We call it after we create somebody's book, we actually create a podcast for them and we interview them on every chapter of their book so that prospects can get a taste of them. Put their video on their website, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Because here's one of the big challenges I have with marketing, Jeff, is most clients, when you get to their website, the call to action is always schedule a call with me. I'm not ready to
Mhm.
do that. I'm still researching. I don't know who you are yet. Give me an opportunity to listen to a podcast, to watch a video, to download a report, to get a free copy of your book. Let me take steps towards you, build the relationship. Then I'm ready to do business. Now I'm ready to schedule a call. And the beautiful thing, Jeff, when you do it that way, that's not a sales call. You've preconditioned me to hire you. Because when I set that call, I already know I like you. It's just a matter, do you have the right program? Are you in my budget? All of that. That's a totally different conversation. That's how you increase your closing ratio, is by preconditioning people to hire you before you ever meet with them. It's a it I
I want to riff off of that for a minute, because basically what you're talking about is you are pushing, uh, well, you're displaying your expertise.
absolutely.
And you're pre-framing the conversation, right? You're pre-framing them as, listen, I could tell you all day long that I'm a great marketer, but let me show you. Right?
Absolutely.
Let me show you. How many books have you written? Well, I've written this book. Right? How many podcasts have
Yeah.
you done? Well, I've interviewed, X number of people. So you actually have this gravitas, that you can really display and tell people and be like, listen, it's not just the nice clothes that I'm wearing or the Rolex that I have on my arm. It's the actions that you've seen me take day after day, week after week, month after month.
Yes, very much so. And the formula that I use there is consistency over time. And if you're consistent with your message, your marketing over a long period of time, your audience is going to find that you're trustworthy, you're consistent, and they want to do business with you because you're not a fly by night person. And so be
So,
consistent.
So I want to dog this a little bit more, because like expertise is something that it's pretty easy these days for anyone to get up and say, hey, I'm an expert in this, I'm an expert in that. No matter how nebulous the term can be, right? You do have to demonstrate it in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there certainly are right ways to demonstrate your expertise and wrong ways to demonstrate your expertise. Why do you think that a physical book actually elevates that, as opposed to the number of videos that I create or the number of social media posts or the blogging that I do? What's the difference in your opinion?
Yeah. In our culture, Jeff, experts have books. It's been that way for decades. Okay. I didn't create that. Zig Ziglar became an expert when he started publishing books. Tony Robbins, right? Do you remember he used to walk on fire and do seminars until he published his book, Unlimited Power. That book made him a household name. It made him an expert, right? Dave Ramsey, Suze, or you name it. Experts have books. It's because marketing effects take place in the mind of your audience and how they think of you. And if they think that experts have books, when you have your book, you go into a new category of expert in their mind. Okay. That's why a book trumps everything else as far as credibility. And the cool thing is, it's pretty simple to get one done these days, right? But it's how your audience thinks. And we all think the same way. We have these category ladders in our mind, right? If I say airline, you have a number one airline in your mind. If I say car rental or pizza delivery or whatever, same thing in everybody's market. And you're competing against how your audience thinks of you compared to your competitor. And if you're what I call a coffee bean, okay, I love coffee. But if you pour coffee beans on the table in front of you, they all look the same and smell the same. If you look like and sound like all of your competitors, you're giving me no reason to choose you. But when you offer me to get a free copy of my book, now I'm paperback expert, right? And we publish in Kindle and ePDF, but if you're just going to do an ebook, you're going to still struggle. Do you know how many ebooks I have on my computer somewhere, Jeff?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure thousands.
But you know that a physical book, do you realize it's sacrilegious to throw a book away, Jeff? We move it from house to house. Okay?
I didn't throw any away in my move.
That's right. We don't. And so you become a household name. You become an asset in that person's life, a resource that they will go back to over and over again and tell others about because they can touch it, feel it. And when you sign your book and mail it to somebody, game over, man. Game over. So it's how you approach the whole thing, but it's how people think. That's why.
You know what's interesting? I was at the Funnel Hacking Live event a couple of months ago, and almost every speaker, when they got up on stage, had their books in everyone's seats.
Yes.
Right. So I ended up coming home with like 15 pounds worth of books.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was great because, now when I'm looking at these books, all right, I want to be devil's advocate here for a minute. Not all of them were well written or even well presented. Some of them just had, picture of the guy going like this, or, just some off color that I don't know, that I would never choose. Right. Or the font would be weird. And it just sort of like, do I really want to read these books? And
yes,
the truth of the matter is I haven't read them all yet. Right. Simply because I look at it, it's like, it doesn't appeal to me. Right. It just doesn't. Maybe it did at the time. Maybe I got a little hyped when I picked up the book and stuck it in my backpack. There may be something that kind of turned me off to it. Right. So what kind of things do you look for that can increase the readability of the book once you get it into someone's hands?
Yeah. Formatting is one thing. Cover design's great. Formatting the interior of the book so that it looks good, it has some white space, it's easy to read. I picked up a book the other day, Jeff. I swear to you, the thing was 392 pages in a 7 font with a half spacing between the lines. I'm like, I can't even see anything. And I tossed it aside. Opened up another book. It was written like a parable. Remember the 1 Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard and all that type of formatting, big white spaces, big letters, lots of space. That's inviting. I tell people, if you're going to write a book for a business perspective, you need to be shooting at about 100 to 135, 40 pages. Okay. In a 6 by. Don't publish a brochure and don't publish War and Peace. But when you get it, make sure you've got professional editors who are reading and fixing your vocabulary. Okay. Because it does make a difference. And make sure that the look and the feel of the interior design. So here's what happens, Jeff. When you hand somebody a book, here's what you look at: the front cover, you flip it over and look at the back cover and read that teaser text. Then you thumb through it to see how it looked, and you usually land on table of contents, and you scan down and you
or
find
the pretty
one
pictures.
Yeah, and then you open it up and you start reading somewhere. If it's captivating, compelling, many times you'll go back to the front and read the whole thing, or you'll just say, these are the only 3 chapters in this book that are great. That's okay. But too many times I see business owners self-publishing without getting professional help on the format, the proofreading, and the layout. Okay.
That is so important.
It's huge because if you don't get that, you kill your credibility. Just like you said, it's like, it wasn't quite what I expected. All right. That's a credibility killer. It starts going down. And so if you're going to publish a book, you can write it. I tell people all the time, well, never write a book, by the way. You should never write a book. You should always speak to write your book. It's faster. That's another discussion. But get your book out. Have somebody professional edit it for you. Have them design the interior, the cover. Make it a great representation of who you are. And it's going to take you a long way in building your credibility.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's a really profound idea. I want to drill into this a little bit more, because some of the latest books I've been reading, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi and Atomic Habits by James Clear, both of which have, they're always directing you either in the middle or end of the chapter, like, hey, I got a handout for this, right? So, go to the site and download the handout. Go to the site and download the PDF. Go to this, go take some action after each chapter. I view it in one way as a way to keep you engaged so that you're not just reading the book, putting it down and going to sleep, right? That you're also taking action on the concepts that they're trying to teach you. How
Right.
do you help your authors sort of navigate that, or come up with what are the best takeaways, meaning the best handouts or the best PDFs to accompany the chapter that they would need to make it more interesting?
Yeah, great question. Because books can become more and more interactive now with websites. We put QR codes in some of our books, so you can just scan it with your phone. It takes you right there. We've had some authors create a landing page that says all of the resources in my book are at that one page. Just go get it. I'll reference it throughout the book, but that's where you are. Because a lot of times you're reading books, especially if they're kind of self-help or whatever, and the author says, "Well, I need a workbook to go with this book." And we're like, "No, you need downloads that can go," right? And one of the important reasons to do that in a book is if somebody buys your book on Amazon, yippee skippy, you get a few dollars, but you don't know who they are. They're not added to your list. But if you put a code in the book and they download a free report, now they're on your list. Now you can market to them, engage with them. That's why you want to do something like that. Does that make sense?
Total sense. Total sense. I
Yeah.
love that. When you have when you have authors that that engage in this format, what have you seen as the net effect, or like the bump in their business, that once they go down that prescribed route, they create the book, they get it published, they send free copies to everybody. That's that is a expense. It's not the $5-6, to send a book priority mail. You want to get it into at least a couple hundred, if not a couple thousand people's hands.
That's right.
What happens there?
Yeah. Over time, it's like compound interest. Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And what happens is when you're consistent in your marketing and you're mailing copies of your book out to people, what happens is you're preconditioning them and they're going to respond and your business is going to grow. A book has shelf life. Okay. You invest in a book one time, it pays you back year after year after year. I've got numerous clients. One in particular in Branson, Missouri, pretty small town, but he's a retirement financial guy. And he started his book. He wrote his first book in 2014 with us. He came back last year, wrote his second book, because what has happened is with him, he's got a radio show and his call to action is get a free copy of my book. I'll mail it to you. He mails out, he's mailed out over 1,500 copies of his book over the years. He's like 300 or 400 of those actually became clients. Do the math on the commission. He's like, my book has paid for itself 40 to 50x over time. Again, there's that formula, right? Consistency over time. He hasn't deviated. His call to action is always get a free copy of my book. He mails it out to them and they read it. They understand, they bond with him because he tells stories, and they walk into his office with his book in their hands and it's dog-eared highlight. And they're like, I've got 3 or 4 questions. And here's the best part. After they become clients, they sit there and say, Brad, can we have a few copies of your book? Because we got some friends and people that we want to give it to. And he says, yeah, would you like 5 or 10? So he's preconditioning, he's getting clients and he's getting referrals because he's consistent in his message and his marketing. So does it cost him a few dollars to mail a book? Absolutely it does. Is it some of the best marketing he's ever done in his life that he would tell you? Absolutely it is. That's why he wrote a second book. Hands down. So it's consistency in your market and being known for something. He's known in his market as the safe money guy. That's where he drove his stake in the ground. That's what he does, right? We all have something like that, but we're not consistent with our message. And that's what kills most marketing. And so you've got to be consistent, but the return on it, I wrote my book in 2013. I still use it today to gain clients, get referrals, and grow my revenue. I don't know anything else that's better than a book for long-term positioning in the mind that you're the expert, and for ROI, because I paid for it. Now all I have to do is buy copies, which are cheap, and mail them out. So.
I want to touch on something that you alluded to earlier about how people, when they create the book, they also create a podcast that goes along with it.
Yes.
Walk me through that process. How do you, and why is that process so profound? Why is that activity like, the part that really cinches everything?
Yeah. It's cool because I want our clients to bond emotionally with their audience. Okay. So a book is a great platform for that. Podcasting is a great platform for experts, right? Again, it's how the mind thinks. But what happens is we interview our clients on every chapter of their book. So if they had 12 chapters in the book, they have 12 podcasts now where we are interviewing them, right? So when you go on TV, Jeff, you get interviewed. You're the expert. That's how we do it. But really, what I want out of that is I want you to come through. I want people to listen to your podcast. We do video as well. So we've got videos to go on your website and YouTube and all that. I want your prospects to see you, to hear you. And then when they read your book, because we use a speak to write process, so you're not typing your book, you're actually speaking it. They read your book and they hear the same thing in your book, in their mind, that they just heard on your podcast or your video, because you're going to say the same things. Then when they schedule that call with you and you have that conversation, they're going to hear it again. And there's that consistency over time thing. I want people to bond with you emotionally. That can happen through a book. It can happen through a podcast. And it's part of that perception that, wow, you've got a podcast. And oh, by the way, you need to understand how to be a guest on podcasts so that when they go on your website and hit podcast, they say, man, this guy's been on 15 podcasts. Somebody must really, yes, people listen to me. You should listen to me too. Would you like a free copy of my book? It's all to build credibility in the mind of the audience. That's why we started doing podcasting for our clients.
Amazing. That's such amazing advice, because really what you're doing is that you're taking an activity that they already know how to do, right? Like, I joke all the time, I may not be the best writer, but, put me up in front of somebody, you and I can speak about this for hours, right?
Yes.
And have a lot of fun doing it. And it's so engaging and it's so much fun. And it's like, how else am I supposed to be able to get this information out? Right.
Right.
And when you start thinking of the different ways that you can take this content and, like converting this podcast back into a transcript, back into a blog post, back into social media quote cards, things like that, you can take, even a small conversation like this one, 20, 30 minutes, and break it apart and create another 30 to 50 assets, which is absolutely amazing. And a lot of people don't really realize, just how powerful, this could really be for you.
And in doing that, making sure that as you do those assets, they link back to each other. So I'm a big email fan, right? So you send an email out to your listener, hey, I was just on a podcast with Jeff Mendelson. Check it out here, click. And now they go and hear me being interviewed by you. And then a week later I say, hey, here's a blog post on X, right? Well, guess where that blog post came from? It's there. It's click there. And so it's got legs. It's got a lot of tentacles when you think about it. And you're right. Business owners are experts at what they do. They can talk about it all day long. That's why we created our speak to write process, because we just structure it. But whether you're doing a book, a podcast, a video, build a quick outline and share the content with the world that you have, because they need it. And when you do it consistently over time, you're going to elevate in your credibility in their mind and attract to you the right type of audience.
Amazing, amazing advice, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Can you please let everyone know how they can learn more about your business and how they can reach out to you directly?
Absolutely. The easiest way is just go to our website. It's paperbackexpert.com. And from there, you can, all things Michael are there, right? But that's the easiest way. You'll find everything that we do, paperbackexpert.com.
Amazing. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an excellent engaging
so much
conversation. Fun. I love it. I love nerding out on this stuff. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.